Okay. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله وحده والصلاة والسلام على من لا نبي بعده. All praises belongs to Allah and peace and blessings be upon the last and the final messenger, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So today we have another RQF level 5 interview, right?
Yes.
This is RQF level 5. Okay, so can you please introduce yourself, who you are, uh, when did you join, when did you started studying with us, where do you live? So first of all, explain to me who you are before we start the interview. What
Uh,
is
my name is my name is Abdul Rafay Ahmed, and I'm currently studying DevSysOps Level 5 in Al Nafi. I joined Al Nafi last year, and I currently live in Saudi Arabia.
you joined Al Nafe last year?
Yes.
Are you the one who's also working on uh, who scored a position like in intermediate or something? Are you the one?
I didn't score a position, but 90%, 90 or 93.
93. Okay, so I remember you now. Okay, so your father uh, came to me to talk about like some of your US relatives, right? Are you the one?
Uh, I don't remember that.
Hold on, hold on. Okay, hold on. Let me check. What does your father do over there?
My father works in a fertilizer company as DCS operator.
Yes, yes, he's the guy. Okay. Are you the one with the group in the group with Zubair, right?
Yes, yes.
Okay, okay, mashallah. Okay, okay, okay. I remember you. I because I remember the names of all of my students. Okay, that's good, mashallah. Okay. So you did your like what is your academic qualification? What is prior to joining us?
Metric.
So you did your metric, okay, mashallah, and you did that from Saudi Arabia, right? Like that's O level,
Uh,
right?
I did it from Pakistan.
From Pakistan. What was your percentage in that?
93, I don't remember exactly, but 93.
And then after that, you joined your father in Saudi Arabia.
Yes, I did it.
Okay. He's working in Jubail, right? Okay. And now you joined us last year for DevSysOps, RQF level 5. Mm-hmm. And so what do you intend to do? Well, once you complete your exam and everything, what do you intend to do? Do you aspire to go to UK for your last year of studies or to US? What do you want to do?
I intend to find the job after this, and I'm currently enrolled in level 6 as well. I will complete that diploma after this.
Okay, mashallah. Okay. My recommendation to you would be that to complete the HND with level 6 and then head to USA. You have some relatives in the USA, right? Your friends, your father
Yes,
friends, or something like that, right?
yes.
Right. So you can take the last year of your bachelor's over there when you're equipped with your AI ops, inshallah, when the time comes and you pass the exam, then that will give you a very solid foundation of settling it down over there. I'm seeing you for the first time. I think did we ever had any conversation
Yes, we had a conversation, but it was without video.
without video long ago, right?
Yeah.
Because I remember Rafe Ahmed, there is another student, Abdul Rafe. He's the youngest CISSP in Canada. At the age of 16, he passed his CISSP exam. He's also doing level 6, I believe. Uh, okay, mashallah. Okay, that's good. So your name is Rafi Ahmed, right?
Yes.
Rafi
Abdul
Ahmed.
Rafi Ahmed.
Abdul Rafi Ahmed, mashallah. That's a good name. And you are in so you have completed all the work. Now, keep this in mind when we start the presentation. It is going to last for 15 to 20 minutes is the time that you can have in terms of presenting your topic, explaining, and then there will be a Q&A session, right? The Q&A session is the one that we will ask questions, so on and so forth. It's a very standard exam. The exam format is changing slowly and gradually. In the next 3 to 6 months, we will change the exam in the next 6 months' time, where Al Razak Labs will become part of it, right? I would highly recommend you to go and do the Al Razak Labs because we are placing many people in Saudi Arabia on jobs. As I said, like our goal at Nafe is, university's goal are to just get you complete the course and move on and hand you over a diploma, right? That is not our intent. Our intent is complete all the core courses that you have to do and then get on the job, right? Pass the exam. In the Pearson exams, it's all assignments, right? And MCQs. Uh, but that is mapped to heavily to academic qualification part in the and which is coming. It's coming in September, October. We will announce it, October, November, something, right? So we will start doing those as well. In the case of EduQual that you're going through right now, there are two parts of the exam. Part one is MCQs that you have already completed. Then before you do the part two, you have to complete all the respective courses on time, complete all of them, the core courses specifically, and then go for the topic. You were given a topic, you complete your presentation. Now you're going through a presentation. If you pass, that's great. We will not be able to issue you the diploma until we see that all the other requirements are met. Those are very basic requirements. Complete some of the classes, make sure you do all of them. But the tough part is where you're sitting right now. That's the final step, right? I hope and I wish you the best that you are able to pass this thing. Okay. The exam is going to start in the next 5 minutes. So I'm just going to go through some of the things. Our goal is to ensure that you have the knowledge. So the exam is based on the same principle as if you're going for an interview. So imagine if you're going for an interview, you'll be going through the same process, right? We will be asking you a series of questions. You have to answer. If you do not know the answer, you can just say, pass, which means like, can you pass on to the next question? That will save us time. If you know the answer, try to give the answer in the shortest possible way. Pay attention. If I'm asking you something, for example, describe the role of a pod in Kubernetes, for example, right? So you just describe to me the role. Don't go into too much detail, right? So, or if you are going into the detail, it has to be relevant, right? The topic that we have given you is Kubernetes, right? It is one of the topics which is pretty big. And in Saudi Arabia, globally in artificial intelligence, 300 billions are being invested, right? Globally. Alone in Saudi Arabia, they are investing more than $36 billion. So out of 300 billion, $36 billion are being invested in Saudi Arabia. So Saudi Arabia is a huge market, right? So for you to find a better job in order to support your family and your father and everything is going to be very easy for you because it's a huge market. Saudi has a very mature IT industry, right? So if you complete all the core things, and even if you complete along with this, one of the exams of Kubernetes, right? Like the CCAT or CK or CKS, that is going to significantly help you in terms of finding, a six-figure salary job, inshallah. Okay. So the goal is we will guide you every step of the way. You may share your screen now. We will start in 1 minute. I will start taking notes, right? When I tell you to stop, then you have to stop. Okay. Try to give your presentation in the best possible manner. Don't get confused. If you're not able to understand my question, please ask me again and say, can you please repeat the question? And I will be able to repeat the question, right? Okay. What we are marking here is a complex rubric which looks into your body language, how you're performing, how you're communicating, your knowledge aspects. All of these things are taken into consideration. Now keep this in mind. The interview is being marked by us, but it is also being marked by our solution, Al-Bari. Al-Bari is one of the names of Allah. The solution name is Bari. What it does is, Al-Bari is the name of the project. So Al-Bari is the solution. What Bari does is that it will evaluate the rubric and it will see the marks that I've given are the right ones or not, right? So it will evaluate your video, your speech, your body language, your facial recognition, all of those things to pick out how are you performing in the interview. So that will be done and that will be part of the assessment. So we are using artificial intelligence in doing so. I believe we are the only one in the world right now who's doing that right now. I don't know of any university or college who's doing it right now, right? So that's something that we are already doing. So I wish you the best. Bismillah, let's start.
Thank you. Can you see my screen?
Let me expand this. Yes, I can.
My name is Abdul Rafi Ahmed. I am studying diploma in DevSysOps in Al Nafi, and the topic of my presentation today is DevSysOps architecture with Kubernetes. The key themes that I will be going through today are overview of Kubernetes, DevOps integration, SysOps and automation, cloud security, and finally governance, risk, and compliance in Kubernetes. Kubernetes is an open source container orchestration tool created by Google based on their extensive experience in managing and scaling apps and microservices. Uh, Kubernetes has a distributed architecture, and the core components of Kubernetes are control plane, pods, and nodes. The control plane is itself a group of multiple components. And as we can see in the diagram, the main component that is the backbone of the control plane is Kube API server. It handles all the communications between all of the other components, and every component that has to communicate with any of the other components has to go through the Kube API server, and it is the backbone. Next, we have etcd. It's used for storing and persisting the state of the cluster. It's This is also distributed, and you can install it on multiple servers to make it reliable. Next, we have Kube Scheduler. This component is responsible for scheduling pods on the nodes. It brings into consideration the tains, tolerations, and other things when making this decision. And finally, we have the Kube Controller Manager. This is a package of control loops that monitor and bring the cluster as close to the desired state as possible. Next, we have pods. Pods are the most basic execution unit in Kubernetes. They are responsible for running our application in a container runtime. They can be single container or multi-container. Next, we have nodes, and the nodes are the main hardware that our pods run on, and they are responsible for managing the states of pods and coordinating with the control plane. The two main processes that run on a node are kubelet and kubeproxy. Kubelet ensures that the pods that are to be run on the node are in their desired state, and they are healthy by doing liveness probe and readiness probe, etc. And it also manages the local storage that is assigned to the pods. Next, we have kubeproxy. It is responsible for managing networking rules and ensuring correct IP service mappings for the pods. Kubernetes seamlessly integrates with most of the DevOps practices, and it usually sits at the end of the continuous deployment pipeline. It comes after the stage of building the image and testing it. And we can use multiple tools such as Jenkins, TeamCity, etc. They can be combined with Kubernetes. But these tools, they are traditional CI tools. They are push-based, and they are slowly decaying out because their approach is not really secure, because you have to store credentials on the CI tool. For example, if you want to deploy your manifest through Jenkins, you will have to configure the credentials for your Kubernetes cluster, and you will have to make it accessible to Jenkins. So if you are running a runner that is, for example, if you are using a public runner in push-based tools, for example, if you are using the GitLab runner, which is a public one, you'll have to then make your cluster public as well to make sure that the runner can access your Kubernetes cluster. In these tools, if they are compromised, then your entire state is effectively compromised, because the attacker can then access the credentials, and he can access your cluster as well. And due to this security issue, most of the companies use continuous deployment tools that are installed within the cluster. For example, Argo CD and Plug CD. You don't have to configure credentials for them, and you can restrict them networking You can restrict the networking aspect of these tools to only pull your repository, so you can make them safe. To you can make the You can secure your network if you are using these tools. You can place your entire cluster behind a NAT, for example, to make sure that no one can access your cluster publicly. And these tools come with a sync tag feature. For example, Argo CD can automatically detect that your image in a container registry changed its hash. If the image changes its hash, it will automatically pull the image from the container registry and apply it to the running pods. And the entirety of this process can happen without a single second of downtime, thanks to the power of Kubernetes deployment. In the field of sysops and automation, Kubernetes offers several features, native and third-party integrations as well. The first of which is auto-scaling. Kubernetes can automatically increase the number of pods and the number of resources in response to traffic spikes. And there are multiple strategies you can configure for Kubernetes. First of uh, First of all, there is horizontal pod auto-scaling, which will automatically add another pod in response to increased traffic. And then there is vertical pod scaling, which will automatically it will automatically ease the limits on your pods in response to a traffic spike. For example, if I have configured a specific limit of memory on a pod and the traffic increases, the vertical scaler will automatically ease that limit to a larger number. Next, we have cluster auto scaling, and this feature works with certain popular services. This will automatically add another node if your current nodes are uh, overwhelmed, and it will automatically search for any pods that are pending scheduling, and it will automatically schedule them on a new pod. Next, we have manual auto scaling, and as the name implies, this has to be done manually through kubectl or any other tool. And we have this predictive scaling. This works based on an AI model. It can automatically predict that you will have an increased traffic spike after for example, a few hours, and it will automatically increase the resources or any other. It will adopt any other strategy to automatically increase the number of running pods or the number of resources before that spike happens. And finally, we have custom metrics. This is not a separate strategy, but this allows you to change the metrics of the other strategies. For example, if the default horizontal pod auto scaling happens on memory and CPU usage, you can add a custom metric that you can uh, scale your cluster in response to the number of requests, for example, made to your application. So Kubernetes is very flexible in the scaling process. Next, we have self-healing. Kubernetes can automatically restart pods that fail or encounter errors or that fail their probes. So, for example, if a pod has a runtime error in a specific area, for example, I am operating a web server and it can't handle post requests, for example. Now, whenever a user makes a post request, it will automatically crash the pod due to some error. Then Kubernetes will automatically restart it and it will continue to run until another post request is made. And finally, we have infrastructure as code. Kubernetes has a native infrastructure as code feature. For instance, the manifest files that we use to configure Kubernetes, they are a form of infrastructure as code. But aside from that, Kubernetes also allows third-party tool integrations. For example, it allows integrations with Terraform and Plumi, etc., for managing your cluster, for deploying your cluster. And these infrastructure as code tools, they come with an inherent security feature. For example, if you have a Terraform file that is known to work, you can scan it with static code analyzers that can find out any configuration errors in that file. And then whenever you run and deploy clusters using that configuration file, it will be inherently secure. because there was no gap for left for human errors. Cloud security. Kubernetes has numerous security features, native and third party as well, that that can apply to both cloud deployments as well as on-premises deployment. These include networking policies, role-based access, secret management, and a secure runtime for containers. So first of them is network policies. In a research published by an institute in 2019, it was found out that there are more than 300,000 Kubernetes clusters that allow public access to the Kube API server. Now, this is very dangerous, and if they had configured the network policies correctly, this would not have happened. And that number amounts to almost 80% of Kubernetes clusters at that time. So this is a very important feature that we should use in our cluster. And also, can limit the lateral movement between pods using networking policies. And it is recommended by CISA to blacklist all types of movement by default and only allow the movements that are needed to make the network secure. Next, we have RBAC. It provides fine-grained access control, enforcing the principle of least privilege, and this reduces the blast radius in case of an infiltration. So if there's an infiltration on a low privilege user, then the attacker won't be able to compromise the whole cluster. Next, we have custom authorization solutions. Kubernetes allows you to implement custom authorization solutions. For example, AWS has implemented pod identity and other type of authentication features using this webhook. Kubernetes supports a lot of latest secure container runtimes, for example, Docker, Containerd, and Mirantis. And this increases the isolation. These container runtimes provide the isolation between pods and nodes and prevent privilege escalations. Next, we have image security. Kubernetes allows integrations with a lot of image scanners, for example, Clear and Encore. It allows you to scan your images before deploying them, so you can prevent application-specific errors and application-specific vulnerabilities. Next, we have pod security standards, and these are in place to define the isolation levels of pods in your cluster. These are defined on the namespace level, and there are three of them. The first one is privileged. This allows for minimal security, and it allows for more privilege escalations to pass through. This standard is not recommended by any of the security agencies, and the recommended standard is mostly baseline. It is the default standard also. It prevents most of the privilege escalation, but it's not the most secure one. There is a third standard, restricted. It implements the best pod hardening mechanisms, and it follows strict policies, and it won't allow you to configure uh, unsafe pod features, for example, host PID and host networking. And next we have rolling updates. This is not a separate security feature, but it is indirectly a security feature, because prior to Kubernetes, most of the network administrators and infrastructure administrators, they didn't use to update their software components because in it cost them ultimately in financials, because there was a certain downtime associated with it. But due to the rolling updates and Kubernetes deployments, you can keep your applications and infrastructure updated without having to suffer a downtime. Kubernetes supports compliance as code with multiple tools such as AWS Cedar and Google Zanzibar. And it also allows open source tools such as OPA and OpenFGA for non-cloud based deployments. Using these tools, you can enforce numerous policies and comply with a lot of policies, organization specific policies, and you can create any sort of policies. For example, you can force a specific naming convention, you can force specific folder structures, and all of that. These integration happen through the admission controller. It is a component in Kubernetes that asks for validation from an external tool before applying change. RBAC, as described before, it is an authentication feature. it allows for least privilege principle, and it allows access based on certain policies, and it doesn't allow all out access to anyone. Next, we have logging and monitoring. Kubernetes has a native logging feature, which is disabled by default, and we can enable it, and we can configure it to our likings. And it also allows for multiple third-party solutions, for example, Prometheus, Grafana, Falco, and Sysdig. And you can configure each of them as you like. This is the presentation.
You still had 22 seconds left. Okay, so that's good. Okay, I'm going to give you some feedback regarding a couple of things. Okay. The presentation is okay. We're going to jump onto the questions. I made some of the questions, and there are some inconsistencies and which requires clarity, right? If I go back to the slide that you have, which says cloud security, right? It says part security standard,
Yes.
privilege baseline restricted. That's not a security standard. Standards are, or they're like benchmarks, right? So like PCI DSS is a standard, CIS benchmarking is a standard. These are the standards. That's just a feature, part security feature. There's a privilege, there's a baseline, there's a restricted, right? So there are certain inconsistencies. Apart from that, the presentation is good. Okay, so we're going to start with the Q&A. I have 10 easier questions, 10 intermediate questions, and 10 tough questions. Okay, so we're going to go through all of them one by one. Please relax. The goal is to evaluate your knowledge, so on and so forth, right? So I'm going to start with some of the easier ones first, and as we go forward, then I will keep on adding some tougher ones in there. Altogether, they're going to be 25 to 30 questions, okay? So this is like a very simple question I have for you, okay? The question is that what was there before Kubernetes? Before Kubernetes containers, what were the organizations really doing at that time in the absence of Kubernetes?
In the absence of Kubernetes, there was a very small gap between the creation of Docker and Kubernetes. Before Kubernetes, there were containerized applications in organizations, and they were closed source tools, but there wasn't an open source platform really like Kubernetes. Google used, for example, Boards, and it was really close to Kubernetes before they made it open source under the name of Kubernetes. They managed their microservices, and they utilized Docker,
So prior
but it
to,
was closed
so
source.
the answer is prior to the Kubernetes, there was virtualization. Virtualization is still there, but it's not, because the evolution from virtualization to containers is basically, when the containers came out, virtualization became like a secondary technology. Prior to that, virtualization was the primary one. So now you don't need instances of different EC2 instances or virtual servers running. You can run the application as a container on a bunch of resources, which are virtual machines in itself, right? So that was the answer. Try to, brief the answer, right? Okay. I'm going to give you half a point on that, okay. So the next question I have is like, what is the role of pod in Kubernetes? This is from your own. This is the easier one.
Pod is the most basic execution unit in Kubernetes. It is responsible for packaging your application and running it on a node. It can be multi-container, and it basically carries one instance of your application. You can summarize it like that.
Okay. So it's a bunch of resources cobbled together that you can use, right? Okay, that's good, mashallah. And how important is the API server in Kubernetes?
API server is the backbone of the cluster. Every sort of communication that is done in the cluster is done through the API server. And if the API server is down, then the other components won't be able to reach each other at all, and the cluster will fail. Crash.
So there's another terminology known as service-oriented architecture, right? What this means is that everything runs as a service, right? So
Yes.
what are the core services of Kubernetes? With that, like without that, it will be very difficult for anything to run. What is the core service?
So the services in the control plane are all, I think, core services. For example, without the scheduler, pods won't get scheduled. Without etcd, changes won't be saved to the file. And without the API server, components won't be able to communicate with each other. And the controller manager, without the controller manager, the pod will stay stale and it won't have any live feedback.
Okay. I'm going to throw in a tough one now. Okay. It's going to be a mixture, right? So these were the easy ones. Tough questions are coming up. Brace yourself. I'm just I'm just joking. Okay. What is discuss the role of the etcd key value store in Kubernetes? What's the role of that?
etcd is the backend storage in Kubernetes. It's responsible for persisting the state of the cluster across reboots and other sorts of failures. And it also has a distributed architecture, and you can set up multiple etcd nodes for reliable storage. Every change Before every change is made by Kubernetes, it is saved to the etcd.
Okay, so that's the core configuration file. Can we say that?
Yes, yes.
Okay. Difference between HPA and VPA, horizontal pod scaling and virtual. Like, first of all, explain to me horizontal pod scaling.
Horizontal pod scaling responds to traffic spikes and increase in demand by adding another pod to the nodes. It implements the replicas running, and that is horizontal pod scaling. In vertical pod scaling, whenever a traffic spike is encountered, the resource limits on pods are eased, and
No, I'm
Kubernetes.
not going to ask you VPA. VPA, I'm going to ask you separately. So this is just HPA. So from the configuration perspective, what object is there in the HPA? What do you call that?
Metrics.
It's known as horizontal pod autoscaler, right? That's the object in the Kubernetes configuration file, right? That's what we call it.
Yes. Okay.
So what matrices are there in the HPA?
The metrics.
Which we use to determine it's time to scale the pod.
Yeah. So the metrics in horizontal pod scaling are the same as VPA. I think memory and CPU.
CPU and memory usage, right? Or any other
Yes.
custom matrices, but the primarily is going to be CPU and memory. Okay.
Memory.
Okay. Okay. Advantages. What is the advantage of HPA? Why do we have an HPA?
HPA doesn't require any extensive sort of.
I'm just saying advantage. What is the advantage?
It's simple.
No. I mean, what does it mean by simple? What does it do? It improves availability and load distribution.
Yeah.
Right? That's the answer. Okay. What else is there, basically, that helps us? There's another terminology known as FT. What does it mean for?
FT?
FT. F for Frank, T for Tango. So essentially, what do you call that? In the production, you will see people talking about we need to tackle the FT, fault tolerance, right? So what does HPA really does? That it creates the fault tolerance within the application by doing what? What does it do? Keeps on adding?
By incrementing the number of instances.
Number of pods, right? Number of
Yes.
instances, pod instances. Yes, correct. Okay. So if I have to talk about a YAML file configuration, right? Okay. Let me see. What is the minimum replicas and the maximum replicas you should do for an application that is being used by basically 100,000 people? It's a
Minimum
sizing
replica.
question. It's a sizing question. So, for example, if you go for an interview and they say we have at a given point in time 1,000 user to 100,000 users coming in on our website, right? For payment processing, for paying bills or banking or telecommunication or healthcare or education, whatever it is. What's the minimum replica and what's the maximum replica we should have? Or just a rough question.
Okay, I think 10.
The minimum is 1,
10.
need to have 1, right? And maximum you can have 10 to gauge and start doing it, right? Okay. All right. So the next question I have is just like the target CPU utilization percentage. What is the default value for that? That if it reaches this, we should add another replica and then another replica and then another. We should keep on increasing the part size. What's the minimum percentage we should, the default one that Kubernetes recommend?
I don't exactly know the default one, but I guess 50.
Sorry, come again?
50.
50. Yes, yes. Your topic is very technical. I can go very deep and technical with you, but my goal is like, it's a different series of questions. You will see, I will throw in some easier questions, some intermediate questions, and some tough questions, right? So when you go for the interview, expect anything. Because as I said, our goal is to prepare you for the job interview, right? So when you go in Saudi
Yes.
Arabia for for an interview, and there are thousands of jobs in Saudi Arabia in Kubernetes, right? You may have already seen them, right? You can even apply for that remotely as well, working in US or whatever the case is. So these are the kinds of questions that they're going to ask you because they want someone to manage those parts for them, right? And
Yeah.
normally either you are managing it through EKS or through
Or
Azure
eight.
Kubernetes or basically through Redshift, right? So it's depends on like how you go. I'm going to talk about VPA later on. Uh, what does the term IAC means in Kubernetes? What does the term infrastructure as a code really means? That's the easier one.
Infrastructure as code is used for deploying the cluster and deciding the number of resources and all of that, and configuring the cluster certificates and etc. etc.
Okay. Just give me 1 minute. Okay. 12. Okay. The next is uh, okay. Self-healing. Describe self-healing for me. What does self-healing really means?
Self-healing means that when a pod crashes due to a runtime error, Kubernetes will automatically restart that pod, try to restart it, and it will run. It will be up and running again.
So, what are the key components involved in the self-healing process?
In the self-healing process,
What are the key components involved in the self-healing process?
the
The kubelet, right?
yeah, the kubelet
That's
first
involved.
gets to know about that
What else is there? There's a replication controller, replica set.
replication controller.
What else is there?
Uh, so when the
There's
pod crashes, it will
deployment, there's stateful set.
deployment.
These are all the things,
And
right?
the replication controller, if the pod crashes, the number of replicas will go down, and Kubernetes will try to run another pod to meet that number.
Yes. Okay. So what kind of probes are there for the self-healing? How do they perform the self-healing? Name me 2 probes, 2 types. How do you
Uh,
perform pod health checks?
Liveness probe and readiness probe.
Yes, good. Because like when you go for the interview, keep this in mind. Imagine if you pass this interview, you can pass any job interview because that's exactly what they're looking for. Okay. So you have to be fully prepared. Now, give me the name of a standard, because you mentioned cyber, Kubernetes security standard. That's not a standard. That's a state base privilege, restricted. That's a state. That's not a standard. So name me a standard through which we can configure Kubernetes, infrastructure in a secure manner. Who are making these guidelines? Name any, name one of the companies. There is a very well-known company.
ISO.
No. ISO is one of them, but there is a one which makes the benchmarks. ISO is one, yes. You can apply some of that, but I'm asking for one of the company that creates recommendations of how to benchmark your Kubernetes infrastructure.
CIS.
Yes, CIS. Okay, good. So CIS, they've created the recommended standards in terms of benchmarking, right? CIS stands for what?
Uh,
Center for
I don't
Internet
know the.
Security. Know the name because they can ask you, right? They can ask you. Okay. There is another NIST publication which many companies are using right now because these are the standards that the companies are using to whether they are using on Amazon or Azure or IBM or their own infrastructure, Kubernetes infrastructure. They're using these standards to basically safeguard, their Kubernetes infrastructure. So there is another NIST publication which was created, a comprehensive guide on container security, including Kubernetes. What is the name of that?
I don't know the name.
Okay, that's NIST SP 800-190. Okay, that's one of the standards that the National Institute of Standards and Technology NIST special publication have created. It's a very comprehensive guide. I had that guide open in front of me right now because I looked at you had a cloud security stuff in there. And what I was looking for was basically if I have to ask you questions regarding that, that is one of the standards, right? So you will be asked regarding the standard when you go somewhere and when you have to basically answer the question, right? So I'm going to show you that guide. So remember this, because when you go out for the interviews, people are going to ask you regarding this. This is the application container security guide. So any organization, they have to follow some kind of standard, right? That's one
Yes.
of the standards that they follow. Okay. In Al Razak, there are labs regarding these, how to configure you have to configure an infrastructure based on this standard, right? It came on 2017, but it is still relevant because it talks about all the key aspects, right? That what you need to do in order to make sure that the technology is secure and compliant. That's exactly what every organization right now is following, okay? So it talks about the basics concepts of for application, virtualization, and containers. As I said, before containers, it was virtualization. Now we have containers. What comes after containers? It's anyone guess, right? But this is a mature technology and it will remain like that. Do you know how many containers are running right now on AWS alone?
I have no idea.
It's billions. Billions of containers are right now running. Just on a Nafi application, nafi.com, it's running on a cluster of 10 replicas, right? And the application is running in different, and each replica, each pod has a defined number of sets, right? Defined number of resources.
Yes.
So as the application keeps on moving, going upward, the replicas keep on increasing, and the virtualization and the storage and the EC2 instance, all these things, they keep on increasing, right? So we have the minimum threshold and the maximum threshold all configured in there as well. Okay. All right. So the next thing I have is, okay. So what are the core cyber PCI DSS requirements applicable on basically on Kubernetes?
So
Because if you go in a company, which is a bank or a financial institute or a payment processing company, they are using containers, right? And 99% of the time they are using Kubernetes in one way or the other, right? And their payment applications are running as on a container. So my question is, what are the key requirements that must be met for PCI DSS standard from requirement one? Tell me about requirement one. I can go on and ask about all the requirements, but what is the core requirement one that talks about that is applicable on the Kubernetes part?
logging.
Requirement one is all about building and maintaining a secure network and systems. Logging is requirement number 10. I'm asking about requirement one, right? The question can come from anywhere. This is one of the tougher questions, right? So what's in requirement one? Build and maintain a secure network and systems. This is one of the things that you have already covered, right? In PCI DSS. So tell me, there are two principles which are very important. Requirement one is all about building and maintaining a secure network.
Secure network.
So what are the two things for secure network applicable on Kubernetes?
The first should be the access to the cluster, public access to the cluster, and second could be lateral movement within
Network
the
policies,
components.
the ingress and egress controls, right? That is what is very, very important. Okay. Okay. Um, let me ask you another one. Let me look at your presentation. So what are the inherent security features designed to protect workload within Kubernetes? What are the inherent security features? Give me give me one. Like, for example, role-based access control is an inherent security feature, right? What does it do?
It controls the access to Kubernetes resources, and it allows for role-based access because so a single user cannot get access to all of the cluster. And if there is an insider
It
or any
implements assigned roles, user, group service accounts. It's a fine-grained access control. Good. The second feature is network policies. What does network policies really do? This you already answered in one way or the other, the previous question. So this was part of the PCI DSS as well.
so networking policies we can configure the lateral movement within pods and
Lateral movement, okay. Yeah. East-west traffic, okay.
yes.
And then what else?
And with networking policies, we can control access to the cluster.
Okay. Well, there's one thing which is very important, for anyone, any network to be in place. Let me give
Ports.
you an example. No, let me give you an example. In Islam, there is an emphasis on keeping men and women separate. What do you call that?
Compartment. Compartment
Segmentation.
like
Segmentation.
segmentation.
So segmentation is very important, right? You as a Muslim, I can give you that analogy. If there would have been a non-Muslim, I'd have asked him a different way. So network segmentation, right? Network segmentation is very important, right? And isolation. You need to isolate the network, make sure, right? That's very important. I'm going to give you half on that. Okay. So what does PSP stand for?
PSP stands for pod security policies.
What does it do? Define pod security policy. What does it do?
Pod security policies define the level of isolation, like the pod security standards I described in my presentation.
So it defines, Who can run the pod? Is it root, non-root,
root,
disallowing privileged containers, enforce security
and
best
host
practices?
PID and
Yes. Okay. Okay. Explain to me secure runtime.
secure runtime. Basically, in containerized applications and containerization, the main thing that the main security responsibility of a secure runtime is to provide isolation between the host and the container running on it. So there are a lot of privilege escalations are possible if there is less security. So an infiltration in a pod can result in infiltration into multiple pods running on the same node and into the network, into the host. So a secure runtime prevents privilege escalations.
So Kubernetes supports multiple containers, runtimes that isolate and secure the container
Yes.
execution environment, right? Okay. Okay. How do you ensure that API server security is implemented? I mean, what do you have to do? What are the key features you have to make sure that you implement there?
So first of all, the public access to the API server should be limited. Only the required people can access the API server, and sufficient authentication should be implemented on the API server to prevent unauthorized users from coming in, even if they have gained network access to the cluster, to the API server.
Okay. What else is there? Like, what do you do? You know,
Logging.
no, I mean, role-based access control. You implement role-based
Yes.
access control, right? Okay. Okay. For auditing purposes, what do you do?
For
Basically on the Kubernetes infrastructure.
So first of all, for auditing, you can utilize Kubernetes native feature of auditing, and you can configure it to only audit the required events, and you can then set up a centralized logging server and analyzer such as Grafana, where you can aggregate all the logs and analyze them later. And you can use third-party solutions such as Prometheus to monitor the logging. Monitor the metrics of the running resources as well. And this is very important because most of the Kubernetes clusters result in crypto mining attack, where attackers mostly use the infrastructure for mining cryptocurrency, and it takes up a lot of resources. And if we have configured, for example, sufficient logging system, we will be immediately be able to tell whether we have been infiltrated or not. And it's also required for auditing purposes and forensic purposes. For example, if we have to comply with the specific, most of the security standards, they require extensive logging and auditing of the environment.
How important is the maintenance of Git version control? How important is it?
Maintenance of Git version control.
Yes. How important is it? Like, what happens if you don't control it? Like, what happens?
If you don't control Git, then an attacker can gain access to a repository, for example. He can change the application code according to his needs, and he can then use the cluster hardware as is required. And if there are, for example, hard-coded secrets in our Git repository,
Yes.
he can then gain access to them as well. And this can result in pretty bad scenarios.
Do you know I've been interviewing you using a job, basically description in front of me, along with your presentation in Saudi Arabia right now as we speak. If I show you my screen, you'll be shocked to see that my questions are coming from your presentation and along with this, job
Job.
description. You can see the job description. This is in Saudi Arabia, right?
Yeah.
So they're asking for knowledge of cloud security platform and this and that and what. This is what we do. So what we do is like in the Al Razak, there are labs for you for Jenkins, GitLab, CI, Circle CI, all of those things that you have to complete, record, and submit it to us. And then the AI will evaluate and see if you did it right or not, right? So we give you
Yes.
all the instructions and everything, and then you do that and repeat the process and then give it back to us. This is Rackspace, a company based on US, but they have an on-site position based in KSA, Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, and that's what they're asking for, right? So if you go for these companies, right, and they ask you the questions, these are the same kinds of questions that they will be asking for. What does SRE really means?
Site reliability engineer, and
Yes.
its responsibility is to make sure that the infrastructure is up and running at all times, and scaling and all of that is.
So it requires normally all the core things, which is basically that what they're looking for is a person who can manage the DevOps, the SysOps, all of those things together. And if you infuse AI in them, that's a cherry on the top, right?
Yes.
So that's much better. Okay. All right. So I think I've covered all the key questions. Um, would you like to know your score?
Yes.
Okay. So let me give you your score. Is your father sitting close by?
No, right now he's not at home.
So you have scored 92% in total. I think I was just putting the numbers in there. I never realized that this will come to the same score because I did the calculation right now. I never realized that it will come to the same number as your percentage in your O levels exam, right? Alhamdulillah. So,
And
mashallah, congrats to you and your family. I'm really proud of you, Rafi Ahmed. You did very well. Your things will be compiled and will be sent to basically EduQual. Now, I had this meeting with EduQual last week where they were saying, like, how is this possible that level 5 and level 6 students at the age of 14, 15 are coming in and they are able to pass, right? And so I told them that these are very exceptional individuals. They're working very hard. Their parents are involved. So is your father involved with you all the time, encouraging you to
yes,
study, work, and do all of those things?
yes.
Right? I mean, the composure on your face is very phenomenal, mashallah. How old are you?
I will turn 16. Sorry, I will turn 17 this year.
17 this year. So you are much more calmer than Musa Jamal, or just like Musa Jamal,
Exactly.
right? Mashallah, that's good. You have already started working online, right?
Yeah, I have been doing freelancing, but I don't have a permanent job right at the moment.
So what kind of freelancing work are you doing? Similar
I've
to
been
what you have
doing
studied here?
before I was studying here. I started it before I was studying here, but I've been continuing it along with my studies. Mostly it's PowerShell scripting, PowerShell Python, and along with Microsoft Office 365 tasks and
So
Azure tasks as well.
so you learned the PowerShell scripting, the bash, and all of those things over here?
I learned Bash from here, but I had knowledge of PowerShell beforehand.
MashaAllah, that's good. That's good. Okay. So that is going to help you in terms of managing, becoming a good SRE engineer, right? Do you intend to start for applying for jobs in Saudi Arabia?
Yes.
Okay, that's great, mashallah. That's great. Okay. All right. So here is my point of advice for you. Okay. You did very well. Uh, you have passed the diploma. The final marks will be calculated for the part one separately. We will
Yes.
inform you about that, right? You have scored very high, actually, which is very good. You were able to answer all the tougher questions, um, and your communication skills are also very good as well. In my view, a person whose first
Yes.
language is not English is able to communicate very effectively and profoundly in terms of like making sure that he's able to answer the questions, right? So I'm happy with that. Um, my recommendation to you would be, as part of the DevSysOps, you have completed part one and part two requirements. You're already studying AI ops, which is great. Learn AI ops, learn all those things,
Yes.
get into Al Razak. Because what we are doing is there are more than 30,000 jobs on our side right now.
Yes.
Most of them are in Middle East, and a very considerable number of them are in Saudi Arabia, right? In Saudi Arabia, many organizations are going towards the adoption of cloud technologies, right? Amazon is already developing its own data centers over there.
Data set.
Yes, right? So you can be one of the youngest people to work at Amazon as their data center engineer, and this can be very phenomenal for you, and you can then one day go to the States as well. My academic recommendation to you would be, first of all, the professional recommendation, complete your AI ops as well. Go for the exam, have dual diploma. So you will have level 5 and level 6, right?
Yeah.
Complete the Al Razak requirements, right? Because
Yes.
that's
I
going
have
to make
started
you.
them.
You've already started them? Which ones
Yes,
have
I
you
have
completed so
completed.
far?
I have completed 19 labs, and I had to get additional labs before the interview. I will get them after it.
Were you able to do the Redshift labs?
No, I haven't come to that point yet.
That point? Okay, okay. So you did those Linux labs first, right? The
Yes, yes,
first ones. They're easier, right?
yes,
But do they give you the confidence you need to make sure that everyone understands what
yes,
is being expected? It's very easy, right? It's very easy.
yes,
It's not that difficult. But it will, as you progress, it will become tougher and tougher. The first 50 are very easy, 100 are easy. The second hundreds are tougher. The last hundreds are toughest. But it's a combination. It's the same thing. Doesn't changes anything. What it's doing is like it's a compilation of 10 labs, or add some more things in there and becomes tougher, right? But it's the same thing. I'm very happy, mashallah. So excuse me. So from the academic standpoint, you have to complete your my recommendation to you would be also do HND, higher national diploma.
yes,
If you complete your higher national diploma at a very young age, of by the time you're 18, 19, you can complete that within 6 months. There's no requirement for that. Attend the classes, do the assignments, halas, it's done, right? And then you will be able to go to the States in the final year of a degree program. Your father told me one day, that's how I remember your name. He said, like, one of his relative told him that your son is studying here, and how would he be able to come to the States? So I told him, yes, he will be able to come to the States. So now is a time for you to go and study and go and apply for the final year in the States. Now, if you keep on working remotely, you will be able to sustain yourself, right, in the States. And if with this qualification, and if you pass some of the other exams, I'm going to tell you, pass some of the community certifications and stuff like that, equipped with your diploma and everything, you will be able to apply for a national waiver. There's no need for H-1B visa. You will be able to apply for that and be able to work in the States. Excuse me. So they are looking for very highly talented young people, right? And by the time that you are 27, 28, you will have an American passport with you, right? And so that's my academic recommendation for you. Do your AI ops and HND as well. Okay. And then head to the
yes,
States. Head to the States, you will be able to go there. Because the beauty about SRE or DevOps or SysOps or cybersecurity AI ops engineers, you can work remotely.
yes,
You can work remotely. There's no need. It opens a lot of things for you. Now, there is another thing that we have started, which is the ISACA, partnership. And what it does is, like, anyone who completes AI ops, completes Al Razak requirements, and passes one of the ISACA qualifications. We will help them in getting immigration in the G20 countries, starting from the States. We will help them. In employee matchmaking, so you have to pass any one of the exams. So the membership to that is free. So $150 membership is free for ISACA. We will give it to you for free. Now the examination fee is $750. You only pay $500 through us, right? So that's one thing which is very beneficial for you. Plus, we give you the examination notes, and we also give you 5,000 questions to prepare for the, for the exams as well, right? And it comes with confirmed employee matchmaking. So that's another thing that we're doing in collaboration with ISACA, because in the US, in Canada, in UK, and all of these European countries, they're looking for highly talented people. Anyone who has ISACA qualification, equipped with AI ops, and all of those things, we have started doing that matchmaking service, right? So we are reaching out to, but obviously what this means is you have an AI ops, you have completed all of those things, and now you're going in there. So that provides you a lot of, leeway in terms of making sure that you're ready, right? So it takes time. But what I'm saying is you will be able to do all of those things properly, okay? So that's a good thing. So that's my professional recommendation for you. Finally, I'm really happy. If you have any questions, you can ask me. Otherwise, we can complete this interview and move on. Do you have any questions for me?
Not currently.
Okay.
You cleared
have my
everything.
number? You have my number, right?
Yes.
So anytime if you have any questions and if you would like to ask any questions, feel free to reach out to me. Deliver my congrats to your parents. And I'm really happy that you completed this phase of your journey, and start connecting with some of the if you completed Al Razak program, then we provide you 100% job placement, right?
Yes.
So keep pushing yourself, keep on doing all those things. I believe that you can meet all the requirements, and just like we are helping out thousands of people around the world, we will be able to help you do so as well. Okay.
Yeah.
Again, I wish you the best, and I will be meeting you soon regarding a couple of other things as well. Okay. Thank you for your time. Say my regards to your parents, and I will hope to see you soon next time. Thank you.
Yeah.
Assalamu alaikum.